Right. Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a lovely day. Yesterday was Woden Wednesday, and yesterday I had a divine, spiritual, mystical, magical, transcendental experience, and I'm going to share it with you today. In fact, I had two experiences. The first one I will share with you today. The second one I will share with you tomorrow. What do I mean by this? Well, I wish to save the English race. It is my belief that in order to save the English race, we must go back to our roots, the very beginning of our history. If you look at the very beginning of English history, you can see that we are Anglo-Saxons. We were invited over here by the British to defend the British from the Scottish. Vortigern invited us over. Hengist and Horsa came over. And the great-great-great-great-great-grandfather of Hengist Horsa was Woden, the king of the gods. So essentially we are Germanic pagans at heart, and this history of ours needs to be celebrated because we're being attacked on all sides. For this reason, I began the path of spiritual alcoholism by drinking beer, sacred magical English ale, and meditating on Woden as I drink more and more and more beer. And I decided to change my name from Brutus. Obviously I used to be called Brutus, but that's a Welsh name, that's a British name, and I'm not Welsh, I'm English, and I wanted to find a new name. So I went to the pub and I had 5 or 6 or 7 pints of beer, and I meditated on Woden, and I met a guy called Alfred, and I realized that it was a divine, spiritual, magical, transcendental sign from the gods that I should take the name Alfred, which is why I've renamed myself Alfred. And I've been following the path of spiritual alcoholism and celebrating Woden Wednesday for some time now. Woden Wednesday is of course Wednesday, because Monday is ruled by the moon, Tuesday is ruled by Mars, Wednesday is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is Woden in Norse mythology. Thursday is ruled by Jupiter, Friday is ruled by Venus, Saturday is ruled by Saturn, Sunday is ruled by the Sun. So it's my belief that Woden Wednesday is the great rallying point for our people, which is why usually I go to the pub every Wednesday to drink beer and talk conspiracy theory with random people, because this is going to save our country. However, because it is January, I'm fasting. I'm doing a dry January and a dry February. I've been doing this for about 3 years now. This is my 3rd year. And essentially, I like to do a little bit of a purge, okay? Because Saturnalia is over, Christmas is over, right? We all know you got to stuff your face with chocolate and cake over Christmas, and you put on a few pounds. It's still winter. Nobody's got any money. It's miserable. Everyone's waiting for spring, okay? The real New Year is of course in spring. We're in March, in the constellation of Aries, when there's a great rebirth. So I'm waiting for the real new year to appear, and so I'm doing a dry January. Fasting once a week, no beer, no sugar, running every day. Did this a couple of years ago, lost a stone in 2 months. So I'm going to do the same again this year. So, because of all this, I am sober, and this is very difficult. It's a very joyful experience to be sober, but it's also very painful because you get late at night and it's like, well, I need to drink a beer, but I can't, so what do I do? So last night, Woden Wednesday, I was looking at the sky. It's not raining, very clear, beautiful sky, and I can see all the stars. And I thought to myself, do you know what? I'm going to do something which I've been meaning to do for about 20 years and I've never done. I'm going to go stargazing. So, got in my car, drove out into the countryside, got out the car, stepped in a puddle, got my foot soaking wet, was standing there, freezing, looking at the sky, and what do I see? The biggest star in the sky. I see, well, I didn't know what it was. I thought it was the pole star, but I didn't know. So I got out my phone, fiddled around with it, looked at a bunch of constellations, downloaded a bunch of apps, and I found out and discovered that this star that I was looking at wasn't actually a star. It was a wandering star. It was Jupiter. Jupiter, king of the gods, king of the Romans, the man who killed his father Kronos and became king of heaven. So I'm looking at Jupiter, I'm thinking, wow, you are glorious. You just look absolutely fantastic. And I started to perform an ancient Indian spiritual meditation practice called Tratak. Okay, obviously I lived in India for many years. I am a mystic yogi. And if you don't know what Tratak is, essentially you can stare at the tip of your nose, or you can stare at the sun, or you can stare at dots on the wall, or you can stare at a candle, or you can stare at a candle and then close your eyes and then see the dot, see the flame with your eyes closed. But the point is, it's a process of dhyan, which means concentration, which means you stare at a specific spot. All your concentration goes into that, and you forget everything around you, and you have a meditation. The Japanese actually practice this. They call it Zen. But the word Zen itself comes from dhyan, and all of that comes from, of course, Bodhidharma, who was a great warrior monk, a Buddhist warrior monk, who left India, went to China and founded the Shaolin Temple, and who is in fact the father of Oriental martial arts. But anyway, I digress. I thought to myself, I'm going to meditate on Jupiter. So I did. I focused on the star, stared at it, everything else disappeared, and it slowly transformed into a chakra. And you can do this yourself. Go out and try it, or just buy a candle and do it. But you can start to see all kinds of symbols, all kinds of like wavy lines, and all, you know, almost like you're a hippie and you're on LSD, right? So I'm having this beautiful divine communication with the god of the gods, Jupiter, father of everybody, and I had a realization, and that realization is that I'm a Jupitarean and not a European. And what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is there is a problem for us white people calling ourselves European. And this is a threefold problem. First of all, Europa was raped. Europa was a girl she was a Lebanese, Phoenician, a girl from the Middle East, and Zeus, or Jupiter, being the Chad alpha male that he is, he fancied her. He thought, I'll have a bit of that. So he took the form of a bull, a white bull. Europa stroked the bull, jumped on its back, and Jupiter whisked her away. He swam across the ocean, landed in Crete, and then he had his way with her. So you could say she was seduced, you could say she was raped. Generally, if you look at, if you read about it, everybody says she was raped. Whatever the case, she's a girl who is regarded as being kidnapped and raped by Jupiter. She also gave birth to a son, King Minos, who had a minotaur in his labyrinth, and the Athenians were forced to essentially give their children to him so they could be sacrificed to the bull. So there's this whole... So not only do we have a lady that's been raped, we also have this weird kind of Cretan child sacrifice thing going on in the background. Is this a myth that is very inspiring? Is this like... I don't want to be offensive to Queen Europa or Goddess Europa or Princess Europa or whatever it is you want to call her. I don't want to be insulting to her. She is part of the Greek pantheon. She's part of our history. But does this inspire you? Do you feel like, oh yes, Europa, that girl who got kidnapped and seduced and raped by Jupiter? For me personally, no. I think that in our day and age, obviously we're being invaded by foreigners, we're being crushed on all sides, and the masculine spirit of the white man has been totally decimated by cultural Marxism and feminism and so on and so forth. In my opinion, we need a more masculine founder, a more masculine identity. If Europa was some kind of mother goddess and the mother of mankind or something like this, then okay. I mean, I'm not against the worship of goddesses. Like the Athenians worshipped Athena. I think that's fine. In the Catholic Church, they worship Mary, and I think that's worked out very well for the Italians. They all seem to have a very good connection with their mothers. and it's quite a sexist and patriarchal society. So I'm not 100% against the celebration of a female goddess if it was some kind of mother goddess, but it's not really. She's not really a mother goddess to all the people of Europe, is she? She's a girl who was kidnapped and then raped, and then she gave birth to a tyrant who sacrificed children. On the other hand, we have Jupiter, the king of the gods, the man who runs around having sex with everybody and destroying all of his enemies. So who is more inspiring for men? I would say Jupiter. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that Europa's she's a Phoenician, so she's not even really European. She's from the Middle East, and the Phoenicians are Semites. So it depends what mythology you look at. There are some myths that say she's a descendant of somebody else who's somehow connected to the Greek pantheon. There are others that say she's not connected. Okay, but the point is there's a confusion there, and the point is she's from the Middle East. Okay? She's from the land of the Canaanites. So, again, symbols are very important. Symbols, I mean, you may think, well, who cares? No, these things actually do have a very, very deep subconscious effect on the way that we look at ourselves and the way we think about ourselves. She's a foreigner who was kidnapped. She's almost an immigrant in a way. And then finally, so that's the second problem. And then finally, if she's a minor. Finally, Europa is a minor character in the pantheon, but Zeus, Jupiter is the king of the gods. He is also a planet. He's also a planet, and so by worshipping him, we can engage in astral theology. We can develop a reawakening of our connection to the planets. We can develop an awakening of our horoscopes, of the way that we interact with time. All of this can be opened up. And I've seen this in a practical way as I've preached to people about the Bhagavad Gita and so on and so forth. You see this. I've met all kinds of people that they didn't really believe in God. They weren't that spiritual, but they got into astrology. And it's like, if you get into astrology, you look at your horoscope, and it's like, oh, wow, that's a really good psychological analysis of who I am. And then you start looking at the planets, and you're thinking, well, these planets, they're actually kind of like gods, and they're affecting my life. And then you can worship the planets, and then there is a transcendence. Now you're above the material. Even if you're not really into astrology, if you're worshipping the planets, or if you have a planet, a star in the sky, a wandering star in the sky, as your marker of identification, then you have something transcendent, something above the material, something up there in the heavens, something inspiring. And of course, he was the king of the gods. He was worshipped by the Romans. And of course, my epic master plan to save the white race, to save the European race, to save the English race, to save the Jupiterean race, the final part of my epic plan to save us is to rebuild the Roman Empire. We're going to call it the New Roman Empire. First of all, we're going to save England, okay, with Woden at Wednesday, okay, and we're going to take Parliament back. We're going to have a series of referendums. We're going to kick all the foreigners out, and we're going to have a word with little Prince George, and we're going to say, George, you need to be based, not like your father or your grandfather. You got to be based and red-pilled, and you got to stand up for the English. And he's young, and he'll say, yeah, all right then. So we get him on our side, right? We make him king when he's like 18, and then we say to the Americans, look, you guys, you've got daddy issues because of 1776. You've got to get over it. You're English. You speak our language. You're our colony. That's the blood that runs through your veins. Whether you're a German immigrant or not, I don't care. The Problem with America is it technically actually is a nation of immigrants because they deny their English history. They know it's there, but their founding myth is 1776. And obviously that was a Masonic revolution funded by the French, you see. So their identity is cut off from its myth, from its root, from its heart. And for me as an Englishman, I can go back 1,000 years, 1,500 years, and back to my history. For the Americans, they go back to 1776, and then they're like, oh, well, there's the Mayflower. So their identity has been cut, which is why they're being completely destroyed. And they're spreading all this nonsense all across the world. So this has to be fixed. They need to get over their daddy issues, okay? So if we have a based king, if we manage to kick the foreigners out, they will rally behind us. The rest of the Anglosphere will rally behind us. And then, with America on our side, we'll take Europe, and we'll say to the Europeans, they won't want to accept being part of the British Empire, or the English Empire, or the Anglo Empire. But if we say to the Europeans, hey guys, new Roman Empire, and by the way, you're not European, you're a Jupitarean, they'll say, yeah, all right, we'll go with that. So then we take Europe. America already controls Europe anyway, right? Then we kick all the foreigners out. Then we raise a massive army. We invade the Middle East. And we invade North Africa. We take all that back as well. And well, you can fill in the blanks, right? Problem solved. White race saved. Job done. The world is our oyster. From there we can do many, many things, right? So that is the epic master plan. I'm focusing a lot on Woden these days, but ultimately, if we want to save Europe, we have to rebuild the Roman Empire. That is the rallying cry for Europe as a whole. So, my dear friends, I don't know how we ended up being called European. I've tried to look into it. Nobody has a clear answer. Apparently, it was people in Thrace used to be called Europeans. Apparently, Charlemagne was a European. I've always suspected it was some kind of Masonic conspiracy, but I can't prove it. I think perhaps 100 years ago in England we used to refer to European people as continental. So perhaps it's something which has become more prominent with the European Union. I really don't know. Whatever the case, I don't mean to cause any offence to the goddess Europa. However, we need that masculine energy. We need to worship the king of the gods. We need to worship Jupiter. And we need the men to take control again. Therefore I say, I am a Jupitarean and not a European. Okay, thank you for listening. Hail Jupiter.